One of the biggest threats investors face today, or heck, even anyone seeking to progress, to learn, and grow in life, I would argue mankind's greatest kryptonite comes down to definitions. You see, how you define yourself is everything, and the longer I invest, the more time I spend in the market, the more connections I make, whether that's with all of you or guests on Masters of the Market. I'm literally seeing firsthand the death of far too many wealth opportunities because of how we are defining ourselves. So today, I'm going to talk about 5 traits unique to dividend investors, but also what it really means to be a dividend investor. Ready? So if you don't already know my story, I'm going to go ahead and share it with you in about a 30-second elevator pitch. I essentially have been a workaholic my entire life, starting at the ripe old age of 7, washing and waxing cars, walking dogs, shoveling snow-packed driveways in the winter, to eventually becoming a busboy, a waiter, and a pizza delivery boy before a gym trainer, a firefighter, and then entering corporate America. And ever since the start, I was always an avid saver, with my first big investment into a CD, or a certificate of deposit, at 9 years old after I kicked the piggy bank to the curb in exchange for a legitimate bank account. Now, upon opening that CD, being brand new to the world of having your money actually work for you, I shared the news with my dad, only for him to say, "Why in the world would you do that?" Now, I was baffled, but he went on to share that you never really want to have your money locked up somewhere where you don't have total control over it, and therefore you should put it in the money market. Now, from there, it was at that exact moment my curiosity was struck. I was full of a ton of questions, and it would only take more than half a decade to find myself well into the deep end of the stock market. But here's the thing, my first investment, given how risk adverse I was and didn't want to lose any money at all, I didn't bet on Apple or Microsoft, the Teslas or Nvidias of the world, which weren't even around back then. It was actually into one of the safest bets an investor can make, Vanguard's Total Stock Market Admiral Shares Fund, ticker symbol VTSAX. Now, if you're where I was, new to investing and as nervous as ever to actually lose a penny, it's actually not a bad choice. You're really going to get broad market exposure to the entire US stock market, meaning over 3,600 stocks in a basket, with 33% of them in the tech sector, 13% weighted in consumer discretionary, another 12.6% in industrials, 11.5% in healthcare, and 11.2% in financials, which work out to Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, Berkshire Hathaway, Eli Lilly, Broadcom, all as the top holdings of the fund. Now, in other words, you're really investing into fortified industry leaders. Now, at this point, I was invested into the stock market through a single fund. So by definition, perhaps at that point in time, I was an ETF investor. Not long after, and I mean not long after equals years, I discovered dividend stocks for all they're hyped up to be, thanks to their reliability and all the passive income they divvy out to shareholders in the form of dividends. But what the heck is a dividend investor anyways? And is it foolish to define yourself as a dividend investor? In my opinion, after years of being a quote-unquote dividend investor, there are really just 5 traits that define us quite well, with the first being income-driven. Now, this trait is as straightforward as it comes. Most dividend investors are insanely hyper-focused on ways in which they can actually produce income without really having to move a muscle or work all too hard for it. Moreover, they're generally the fine specimens of manhood that find great satisfaction in their money, making more money for them without putting in the blood, sweat, and tears of hard work. Perhaps this is the whole deal of work smarter, not harder coming into play. Either way, when seeing dividends hit their brokerage account, there are almost always hits of dopamine just producing insane amounts of dividend pleasure. Now, personally speaking, every single week and every month when I sit down to run through my dividend income, the only thing that happens for me is a reignition of motivation to just keep going. And more than that, to simply reinvest the dividends to ultimately roll a dividend snowball. And the dividend snowball is a process of reinvesting dividends earned from assets like stocks, ETFs, and REITs, which essentially is just you buying back more of the asset that actually paid you out in the first place, that results in even more earning potential come the next go-round of dividend distributions. But this all requires us to truly embody trait number 2, which is patience. Now, the stock market is full of just about every type of character under the sun, from our gamblers going all in on penny and meme stocks to growth investors and ETF buffs. But in my opinion, there's really only one type of investor truly understanding the game of patience, because dividend investors are never trying to get rich by Tuesday. As I always say, we are in this game for the long haul, battle hardened. And I am talking about the ability to just sit for decades of time, which, as more and more technology and rapid responses come out into our world today, are warping our attention. It's just harder to do. But if you can do it, the keys to the kingdom of wealth are yours for the the taking. After all, it was Warren Buffett who said, "The stock market is a device to transfer money from the impatient to the patient." Now, in the name of patience, we actually get to see the eighth wonder of the world taking place right in front of our eyes, compounding, which is a powerful investing concept that involves earning returns on both your original investment and on returns that you received previously, so in our case, dividend distributions. The power of compounding is quite simple. If you have $100 and it earns 5% interest each year, you'll have $105 at the end of the first year. At the end of the second year, you're going to have $110.25. Not only did you earn $5 on the initial $100 deposit, but you also earned 25 cents on the $5 worth of interest. While 25 cents doesn't sound like much at first, it all adds up over time. Even if you never add another dime to that account, in 10 years, you're going to have more than $162 thanks to the power of compound interest. And in 25 years, almost $340. So just imagine investing hundreds or better yet, thousands of dollars into companies that you're going to likely buy from and using their products every single day to work in your favor. Well, you might as well invest those hundreds of thousands of dollars right into them so you can actually get compound interest, not complain about being broke, which I don't even think people are broke. They're just simply foolish and impatient. But the key is knowing that it pays to be patient. Now, it then ultimately comes down to finding the right companies to invest into, which leads me to trait number 3. Being risk adverse. Of course, this one may be a bit of a hot take, but I think not. Dividend investors usually stray away from investing into volatile stocks, which tend to be dubbed as growth stocks. And the reason being is because volatility is an enemy, whereas reliability is a friend. Now, I can't even begin to share just how many times I've heard dividend investors out there share that they like to sleep at night without panicking about how all of their investments are performing. And I totally get that because even I myself have shared this sentiment with family, friends, and clients. So perhaps I never really shed the days of risk-adverse investing myself, but there's also just magic in being risk-adverse. No matter what the market is doing, whether it's deep in the red or soaring in the green, dividend investors have targeted companies with a moat or defensive buffers that protect them from any crazy market swings. Think about all the companies that are just necessities, whether it's your Procter & Gamble's, your Johnson & Johnson's, Visa, Waste Management, Coca-Cola's, or Pepsi's of the world. These are, of course, the companies that wouldn't just disappear overnight or lose 50 to 70% of their value in a day or so, which again leads me to quote Mr. Buffett after he shared that he never attempted to make money on the stock market, but rather buy on the assumption that they could close the market the next day and not reopen it for 10 years and he would be just fine. Now, that's the type of guarantee that I personally am looking for in all of my investments. But this also requires trait number 4, which is being calculated. You see, if you're a penny or meme stock investor or even a day trader, you really probably don't care all too much about fundamentals, the health of the company, or how long it's actually going to be around. Even growth investors aren't as calculated here as the dividend investor because we dividend investors understand that it's all about scoring an undervalued equity or even at a fair value to literally own for decades, because we understand that it's literally all about having time in the market, not trying to time the market, as that strategy never works. Now, because we aren't betting nor trying to get rich by Tuesday, dividend investors often find themselves deep in the balance sheet of a company, trying to understand if the dividend yield itself is actually sustainable over time. After all, it's the snowball that we are after here, which requires an insanely healthy balance sheet and, more importantly, the ability to pay the dividend out for years to come. But it's also just more than that, because being calculated means we are some of the finest stock snipers the market has ever seen, and knowing we are locking in on an opportunity likely to hold forever, which all leads to the 5th trait, which is also the most significant reason as to why we invest the way that we do. Trait number 5, freedom seeking. I don't know about you, but I have always been interested in doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to actually do it. And in other words, I have never been fond of being told what to do or even how to do something, no matter the stage in my life. I just didn't jar with reporting to someone, clocking in, or anything of that sort. Therefore, I've always been chasing something most of us dream of, but actually never actually achieve. Freedom. That means freedom to do what I want, when I want, and how I want. That means waking up at 10 or 11:37 a.m. on a Tuesday if you so choose, buying the last minute plane ticket to travel the world, or sipping on a morning coffee for as long as I see fit. And while none of those things are what I actually aspire to do, knowing I can do them is what I'm after. That, after all, is what I believe true wealth really is. Simply freedom. But now, in knowing those 5 traits of a dividend investor, it's time we tackle that second question. Is it foolish to define yourself yourself as a dividend investor, or really any type of investor for that matter? To which I say it absolutely is. You see, by doing exactly that, you limit yourself. You block yourself out from some truly wonderful opportunities in the stock market. And while many of us dividend investors are out there chasing high dividend yields, there are then guys like me that still classify myself as a dividend investor, or just an investor here, but interested in capital appreciation. I'm talking about plays like Visa or Apple or Microsoft. Now, on the other end, Google, which only recently found its way into my portfolio before it started paying a dividend, as well as Amazon and Tesla that don't pay dividends at all, are in my portfolio, which have added plenty of firepower and rewarded me well since their addition to my portfolio. So if I just define myself as a dividend investor, only actually fishing for dividend stocks, I really am going to go all out here in sharing that I don't think I would be where I am today on the 6 figures that I'm sitting on, or on the path here for a 7-figure portfolio. Definitions are useless. Before all else, I am just an investor, which means I go for quality companies with great leadership teams and clean balance sheets. Dividends or not, I am open to all forms of wealth. With that, I want to know how you define yourself. What are some of the traits that make you the investor that you are today? Comment down below to let me know. Be sure to catch more insights right here. But before you click away, subscribe to actually join me on my financial freedom journey.